Midday, July. The river looks dead. Other anglers already packed up and left. But some old Appalachian streammen were just arriving. They knew something the others did not. Trophy trout do not disappear in the heat. They concentrate. And when they concentrate, one man who knows where to look catches the fish everyone else gave up on. The standard advice for summer trout is simple. Fish early, fish late, go home at 10. That advice is not wrong, but it is incomplete. It assumes that midday heat makes trout unfindable. What it actually makes them is predictable. Every large trout in that river is looking for the same thing, cold water, and cold water in a summer river is not random. It comes from specific places. It creates specific seams that trophy trout hold in all afternoon while everyone else is driving home. Trout are cold-blooded. Their body temperature matches the water around them. When water warms past 65 degrees, their metabolism becomes inefficient. Feeding costs more energy than it returns. They stop chasing food. They stop moving. They find the coldest water available, and they hold there, barely moving, waiting. That holding water is a spring seep. It is a cold tributary mouth. It is a deep pool fed by underground flow. These places maintain roughly 50 degrees year-round. On a 90-degree July afternoon, they are the only addresses in the river where a trophy trout can survive comfortably. Here is the critical piece. Big trout and small trout do not go to the same cold water. Small trout tolerate warm water better. They scatter into shaded banks, deeper runs, slower pools. Large trout, fish that have been in the river long enough to learn every cold seam, go directly to the primary cold sources. The biggest fish in the river on a hot July afternoon is almost always at a spring seep or at the mouth of a cold feeder stream, not somewhere near it, at it. The old 1930s streammen called this the rule of the cold seam. A spring seep leaves signs on the surface. The water from a spring is dense and clear, around 50 degrees. When it enters a warmer river, it sinks slightly. It creates a faint color change at the entry point. The surface above a spring seep is often glassy and still, even when nearby water shows ripple. Aquatic moss and watercress grow thick in these zones. They need cold, consistent water and grow nowhere else in a July stream. Old streammen learned to read these signs from the bank before wading. They walked the streamside path in late morning while the heat was building, looking for the cool spots before the fish concentrated in them. Spring seeps leave one more sign, this one underwater. The streambed at a seep entry is cleaner than the rest of the river. Warmer summer water grows algae on every rock. Cold spring water prevents it. In a July river, where every rock in the riffle is dark and coated, a patch of clean, pale, algae-free gravel stands out. It should not be there. That pale gravel is cold water. Wading old streammen felt it underfoot before they saw it. Cleaner footing, lighter colored rock, no slick surface. From the bank, in clear water, it is visible as a lighter zone on the streambed. One more address marker for the same fish. 3 surface signs and now a bottom sign. Watercress, glassy water, pale gravel. Any one of them points to the same cold entry. The cold tributary mouth is easier to find, but harder to fish correctly. Every tributary entering a main stream in summer is colder than the main flow. Even a tiny trickle will lower the temperature immediately downstream. Trophy trout hold right at the edge where cold tributary water meets warm mainstream water. Not in the tributary, not in the center of the main river, at that precise seam. The trout is holding at the boundary, facing upstream, body in the temperature it wants. The food supply of the main river passing within striking distance. 1 foot of water placement determines whether you are fishing an empty lie or the best lie in the river. The size difference between fish at the seam and fish elsewhere is biological. Large trout have larger metabolic demands. When water warms, a big fish suffers faster than a small one. The same river temperature that merely slows a 12-inch trout will shut down a 20-inch brown completely. Trophy fish are the first to find the cold seams in summer and the last to leave them. They are not hiding. They are doing exactly what their physiology requires. And they are doing it in a very small number of specific places, which means they are more findable in July than in May. Summer concentrates the big fish. The angler who understands where it concentrates them is fishing a smaller and smaller pool of water for a larger and larger portion of the best fish. One detail most modern anglers overlook: the cold seam moves during the day. At 8 in the morning, a spring seep is producing water 12 degrees colder than the main flow. The seam is narrow and defined. By 2 in the afternoon, the main river has warmed further. The differential is greater. The spring water pushes slightly further into the main stream before mixing. The seam has shifted downstream, 10 feet, maybe 20. A trophy trout has adjusted its position accordingly. This is why the old method says arrive after 10, not before. The fish is still there, but it has moved to where the seam now sits, not where it was at dawn. Here is the detail that makes the 1930s rule worth the walk. Big trout at cold seams do not feed all afternoon, but they do feed briefly. When the temperature differential between the cold seam and the warm river is at its greatest, usually between 11 and 2, terrestrial insects falling from streamside vegetation into the current concentrate at the seam boundary. The mixing zone creates a slight surface current that collects floating food. A trophy trout holding at that seam will rise to it. The window is short, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes less. Old streammen who arrived at 10:30 were there when it opened. Anglers who showed up at noon were often 15 minutes late. Getting to the seam before the feeding window means reading the signs, positioning early, and waiting. The fish comes to the surface when it is ready, not when the angler arrives. Now comes the failure condition. Most anglers who understand the cold seam walk to the tributary mouth and cast into the tributary. Wrong. The fish is facing upstream in the main river, holding at the boundary. A bait or fly entering the tributary and crossing into the main stream approaches the fish from behind. A natural drift downstream in the main current, passing through the exact boundary where cold water enters. That is what the fish is watching for. The cast angle matters. The drift matters. One presentation that crosses the boundary correctly can produce 10 casts that miss the boundary by 3 feet will produce nothing from a fish that was there all along. Temperature is the tool the old streammen used before thermometers were fandered. They used their hands. Wading upstream toward a suspected spring seep, they would let one hand trail in the water. A sudden rush of noticeably colder water around the wrist meant a seep was entering nearby, usually within 20 feet. They stopped, observed the bank carefully for watercress and moss, watched the surface for the glassy stillness above the entry point, then positioned downstream of it and worked the seam. No electronics, no temperature gauge, just the feel of cold water through the skin of the hand, and seasons of reading what that coldness meant about where the largest fish would be. The practical walk-up on a July afternoon follows a clear sequence. Arrive after 10. The water has been heating for hours, and the fish have moved. Walk upstream slowly along the bank. Look for watercress and aquatic moss. Look for glassy surface patches. Look for tributary mouths, no matter how small. At each cold entry point, stop. Read where the seam sits between cold and warm water. Position downstream, cast upstream, drift naturally through the transition zone. On a river with one productive cold seam per quarter mile, this method turns a dead midday river into the most concentrated trophy trout fishing of the year. Fishing the same river in July as in May catches you the same fish. Fishing the cold seams in July catches you the largest fish in the river. Those fish are not spooked, they are not scattered, they are not heavily pressured. They are in one specific type of place, holding, waiting, available to the one angler in 10 who reads the water before making the first cast. That is the 1930s rule, not a mystery, not luck. The cold water enters the river somewhere. Follow it. Subscribe to Traditional Angling for more field-based fishing knowledge, the behavior behind the bite, explained by the water itself.